3 words killed a $100 million contract. You're dismissed, Thomas. I'm sitting here now 6 months later making more money than I ever thought possible. But that moment still replays in my head like a broken record. The moment when Jessica Walsh, all 36 years of MBA arrogance squeezed into a designer suit, decided my navy tie wasn't progressive enough for her vision of modern workplace excellence. Let me back up. I'm Thomas Pearson, 49 years old, been working federal security clearance for 15 years. Before that, I spent 12 years in the Air Force doing communications security, got out as a tech sergeant, lost my wife Sarah to cancer 3 years ago, and ended up at Nexus Defense because they needed someone who actually understood government contracts. Not the theory from business school, but the reality of dealing with federal bureaucracy. There's a big difference between reading about security clearance and actually holding one. Jessica Walsh read about it in management books. I held a secret clearance with DOE Oversight Authority, which meant the Department of Energy personally authorized me to verify compliance on classified contracts. That distinction was about to cost Nexus everything. The day it went sideways started normal enough. I was reviewing compliance documents for our biggest contract, a $100 million Department of Energy partnership for grid security infrastructure. 3 years in development, covering 6 states, with enough federal oversight to choke a horse. I was the named security agent, which in government speak means I was personally responsible for verifying that everyone touching classified materials had proper clearance. You can't just reassign that responsibility like a desk job. When DOE designates you as security agent on a contract, that designation is tied to your personal clearance file, your background investigation, your entire career history. It's federal law, not company policy. But Jessica Walsh didn't know that. Jessica didn't know much about anything related to our actual business. Harvard MBA, 4 weeks at Nexus, already making enemies faster than she could learn the coffee machine. She'd been brought in to modernize operations and streamline efficiency protocols. Translation: make everyone miserable while justifying her salary. That Tuesday morning, I was wearing the same navy tie I'd worn to probably 200 client meetings. Nothing fancy, but clean and professional. Same black Oxford shoes I'd been wearing for years. I'd worn this exact outfit to DOE facilities, Pentagon briefings, you name it. Never once had a complaint. But Jessica had been reading leadership books about establishing authority and setting new standards. Dangerous combination for someone with zero understanding of what we actually did. The video call was supposed to be routine check-in about next week's DOE audit. Instead, I got a lecture about professional appearance from someone who'd probably never set foot in a federal facility. Thomas, she said, skipping any pleasantries, we need to address your appearance during yesterday's client presentation. I blinked. Yesterday had gone perfectly. Client was happy, inspection passed, paperwork clean. What about it? She sighed like I was being deliberately thick. The tie, Thomas. It's not aligned with our updated professional standards. And those shoes clearly don't meet the requirements we outlined in the new Workplace Excellence Protocol. The Workplace Excellence Protocol was something she'd created the week before, a dress code overhaul buried in a 52-page email about operational improvements, the kind of document designed to let you claim you communicated something without actually communicating it. Jessica, I said, keeping my voice level, I've been wearing this same setup for 6 years. It's approved by legal, it's in the employee handbook, and more importantly, it meets DOE security requirements for contractor personnel. That should have ended it. DOE requirements always trump company policy. But Jessica was just getting warmed up. She leaned back in her chair like she was about to deliver profound wisdom. Thomas, we're elevating standards across all departments. Professional image directly impacts client confidence. Our stakeholders need to see that we're serious about excellence at every level. This from someone who'd shown up to her first board meeting wearing a blazer with shoulder pads that went out of style in the 90s. And frankly, she continued, this resistance to evolving standards is exactly the kind of outdated thinking we're trying to move past. We need team members who can adapt to modern expectations without pushback. Effective immediately, you're dismissed. The words hung in the digital space like smoke from a house fire. Dismissed. Not terminated, not laid off, not restructured. Dismissed. Like I was a kid who'd talked back in class. No HR on the call. No documentation. No chance to respond. Just Jessica Walsh, playing executive with someone else's career because she decided my tie represented some kind of challenge to her authority. I didn't argue, didn't yell, didn't even ask if she was serious. I just stared at her pixelated face for about 10 seconds, then reached over and closed my laptop. The silence in my home office was complete. The kind of quiet that usually means something important just broke, and something had broken. Jessica just didn't know it yet. I sat there for maybe 5 minutes, staring at my closed laptop. Not angry, not shocked. More like watching a slow-motion car wreck where you can see exactly how it's going to end, but the other driver is too busy texting to notice the guardrail. Jessica had just made the kind of mistake that separates people who think they understand federal contracting from people who actually do. In the corporate world, you fire someone and hire a replacement next week. In federal clearance work, you just severed the only thread holding your contract together. My secret clearance wasn't company property. It belonged to me, Thomas Pearson, Social Security number on file with the Office of Personnel Management. When DOE designated me as named security agent on contract DOE GS47B250M, they weren't picking a random employee. They were certifying that I personally had been investigated, cleared, and authorized to handle classified grid security data. You can't transfer that designation like moving office supplies. Federal Acquisition Regulation 9.405 is crystal clear. When the security agent separates from employment, the clearance designation becomes inactive pending formal transfer procedures. Formal transfer takes 90 to 180 days, assuming you can find someone with equivalent clearance and experience. Jessica didn't know any of this. She probably thought clearance was something you picked up from HR on your first day. I walked to the kitchen and made coffee, the good stuff, not the office swill. Outside my window, the neighborhood was doing its Tuesday thing. School buses dropping off kids, neighbors walking dogs, normal people living normal lives. My son Austin was at Virginia Tech, sophomore year, studying electrical engineering. Smart kid, probably going to end up designing the same power grid systems I spend my days protecting. Between tuition, books, and living expenses, I was looking at about $30,000 a year. Add in the mortgage, utilities, and the medical bills left over from Sarah's cancer treatment, and losing my job was more than inconvenient. Those medical bills were a constant reminder of what really mattered. Sarah had fought for 18 months, and I'd spent every penny I could on treatments, specialists, experimental therapies. Insurance covered most of it, but most still left us with about $40,000 in debt. I'd been chipping away at it, but steady employment was crucial. But I wasn't panicking. I opened my laptop and pulled up the secure folder where I kept my clearance documents. Everything was there. My SF-86 security application, background investigation summary, DOE oversight authorization, and my JPass profile showing active secret clearance through March 2026. The DOE contract was right there too, 47 pages of federal bureaucracy, but the important part was on page 12. Named Security Agent, Thomas D. Pearson, Nexus Defense Solutions. Clearance level, secret. DOE authorization, active. And buried in section 4.3.2, in the event of security agent separation from contractor employment, all project activities must cease pending formal designation transfer as outlined in FR 9.405B3. Translation, no me, no contract. I didn't delete anything or copy company files. Everything I was looking at belonged to me regardless of where I worked. But I did take a moment to appreciate the beautiful simplicity of federal regulation. Jessica thought she was managing personnel. What she'd actually done was violate compliance protocol and jeopardize $100 million in federal funding. And the beautiful part was I had no obligation to fix her mistake. I wasn't a company employee anymore. My phone buzzed with a text from Karen Thompson. Karen and I had worked together for 3 years before she left Nexus last year. Jessica had pushed her out too, claimed she was too focused on legacy processes instead of embracing innovation. Heard through the grapevine. You okay? I typed back, working on next steps. I'll be fine. Karen knew the clearance game as well as anyone. She'd probably figured out what Jessica had done within minutes of hearing I was gone, but she was smart enough not to spell it out in a text. I spent the rest of Tuesday organizing my files and updating my resume. 15 years federal clearance work, 12 years military communications security, multiple DOE certifications. On paper, I was exactly what every defense contractor was looking for. But I wasn't in a hurry. Sometimes the best move is sitting still and letting other people make mistakes. Wednesday morning, halfway through my second cup of coffee, my phone started ringing. Unknown number, 703 area code. Northern Virginia, probably Nexus. I let it go to voicemail. Then it rang again. Different number, same area code. Then again. By the fourth call, I was curious enough to answer. Thomas Pearson. Thomas, thank God. This is Helen Rodriguez from Nexus Compliance. We need to talk. Helen had been with the company for 11 years, longer than almost anyone except the founders. She was the kind of person who actually read contracts and remembered where the problems were buried. If Helen was calling me directly, someone had finally figured out what Jessica had done. What can I do for you, Helen? Thomas, we have a situation. The DOE audit is Monday, and legal just realized there might be an issue with the security agent designation. They're asking questions about your termination. I looked out my kitchen window. Nice day. Sunny. Quiet. What kind of questions? They want to know if your clearance status affects the contract. I told them I'd reach out to you directly. The careful way she said it told me everything. Legal had finally read the actual contract, probably for the first time since it was signed. They'd found Section 4.3.2, done the math, and realized they were about to face a federal audit with no authorized security agent. Helen, I said, settling back in my kitchen chair, I'm not a Nexus employee anymore. Remember? Professional appearance standards. The silence lasted about 10 seconds, long enough for Helen Rodriguez to realize her 11-year career at Nexus was about to get very interesting. Thomas, please, this is bigger than Jessica's mistake. We're talking about a $100 million contract. The audit team arrives Monday morning, and if we can't provide security agent verification... She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. We both knew what happened when DOE audits failed. Contract suspension, funding freeze, and heads rolling all the way up to the executive suite. What exactly are you asking me to do, Helen? Could you just come in Monday and handle the verification? Just for the audit. We'll figure out the paperwork afterward. I looked out at my neighbor washing his car in the driveway, taking his time, doing it right. I don't work there anymore, Helen. Jessica made that pretty clear. Thomas, what would it take? And there it was. The question that meant they'd realized exactly how deep the hole was. I'll think about it, I said, and hung up. The calls kept coming. Legal department, HR, someone claiming to be Jessica's assistant but who sounded suspiciously like Jessica herself trying to disguise her voice. I didn't answer any of them. Instead, I went for a walk around the neighborhood, thinking through my options. I could go back Monday, save their contract, probably get my job back with some story about miscommunication, then spend the next few years working for Jessica until she found another reason to get rid of me. Or I could stay home and let them figure it out themselves. I was leaning towards staying home when my phone buzzed with an email from an address I recognized. Anthony Sullivan, Federal Strategic Partners. Tony and I had served together at Ramstein Air Base in the late 90s. He'd gotten out a year before me and gone straight into government liaison work. Subject line, heard you might be available. Thomas, word through the network is you're no longer with Nexus. If that's true, I've got something that might interest you. DOE oversight position just opened with our Federal Energy Task Force. Primary security liaison, multi-state authority, Tier 3A clearance required, $240 per hour, flexible schedule, work from home. Contract specifically excludes Nexus Defense and subsidiaries. Interested? Tony, I read the email twice. $240 per hour worked out to about $500,000 per year if I stayed busy. Nearly double what Nexus had been paying me. And the exclusion clause meant I'd never have to deal with Jessica Walsh again. I hit reply and typed, very interested. Send details. Tony's response came back in 15 minutes with a secure link to the full contract proposal. Federal Energy Task Force, established under the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, tasked with oversight of grid modernization projects across 6 southeastern states. They needed someone with my exact background. Military communications security, federal clearance experience, and specific knowledge of DOE compliance requirements. The position was everything I'd been doing at Nexus, but without the corporate nonsense. No dress codes, no office politics, no Jessica Walsh asking me to explain why federal regulations couldn't be overruled by management books. I was reading through the benefits package when my phone rang again. This time the caller ID showed DOE, Office of Inspector General. Mr. Pearson, this is Inspector Janet Morrison, DOE, Office of Inspector General. I understand you were recently the named security agent on contract DOE GS47B21100M with Nexus Defense Solutions. That's correct. We've received notification that there may be compliance issues related to your employment status. Could you verify your current relationship with Nexus Defense? When DOE Inspector General calls you directly, it means someone filed a formal complaint or identified a potential regulatory violation. Someone at Nexus had probably tried to explain the situation and made it worse. As of Tuesday, I'm no longer employed by Nexus Defense Solutions. I see. And were you provided with proper notification procedures regarding clearance designation transfer as required under FAR 9.405? No, ma'am. I was terminated via video conference for alleged dress code violations. No documentation was provided regarding clearance procedures. Pause while she made notes. Mr. Pearson, we're opening a formal inquiry into potential compliance violations related to this contract. You may be contacted for additional information. In the meantime, please preserve all documentation related to your clearance status and employment with Nexus. Understood. After she hung up, I sat back and processed what had just happened. DOE Inspector General didn't open formal inquiries lightly. Someone at Nexus had really stepped in it, probably by trying to claim they could proceed with the audit without proper security agent authorization. My phone was buzzing with another call from Helen Rodriguez. This time she sounded like she was having a panic attack. Thomas, we just got a call from DOE Inspector General. They're asking about compliance violations. What did you tell them? I told them the truth, Helen. I was fired Tuesday for dress code violations and nobody mentioned anything about clearance transfer procedures. Oh God, legal is freaking out. Jessica's in meetings with the partners. They're talking about postponing the audit. Too late for that. Once DOE Inspector General got involved, postponing wasn't an option. They'd want answers, documentation, and probably a few heads on platters. Helen, I'm sorry this is happening, but it's not my problem anymore. I didn't create this situation. Thomas, please. What would it take to make this go away? I looked at Tony Sullivan's contract offer still open on my laptop screen. $240 per hour, federal benefits, and the satisfaction of working with people who respected experience over politics. It's too late, Helen. The train's already left the station. I signed Tony Sullivan's contract Friday afternoon with my good pen, the cross my dad gave me when I made tech sergeant. 20 pages of federal bureaucracy, but it all boiled down to one simple fact. I was about to make twice as much money doing the same work for people who actually understood what they were buying. Friday evening, I called Austin at Virginia Tech to let him know about the job change. I didn't go into details about Jessica or the circumstances, just told him I'd found a better opportunity. That's great, Dad. Will this affect my tuition? No, son, you're covered. Actually, things are going to be easier financially. Cool. Hey, I've been reading about grid security for one of my classes. Pretty interesting stuff. Is that what you'll be doing? Among other things. It's important work. Maybe I should consider that field after graduation. There's always room for good engineers who understand the details matter. The weekend was quiet. I organized my home office, set up the new computer equipment Tony's company had sent over, and prepared for Monday. Not the Monday I'd originally planned, but a much better one. Monday morning, I was in my kitchen drinking coffee and reading the Washington Post when my phone started buzzing with texts. Karen Thompson first. Turn on Channel 7. Then Helen Rodriguez. You need to see the news. Then 3 more from numbers I didn't recognize, all saying basically the same thing. I turned on the TV and there it was, crawling across the bottom of the screen. DOE suspends $100 million contract with Nexus Defense following compliance violations. The news anchor was reading from what looked like a prepared DOE statement about irregularities in security clearance protocols and ongoing investigation by the Office of Inspector General. Nexus Defense Solutions stock was already down 9% in pre-market trading. My phone rang. Tony Sullivan. Thomas, you watching the news? Yeah. Any chance that compliance violation has something to do with your sudden availability? I took a sip of coffee. Let's just say some people learned the hard way that federal clearance isn't transferable property. Tony laughed. Well, their loss is our gain. When can you start? How about this afternoon? The DOE audit at Nexus lasted about 30 minutes, long enough for the lead auditor to ask for the named security agent. get told that person was no longer with the company, and politely explain that the contract was therefore void pending formal compliance review. No drama, no shouting, just bureaucratic efficiency at its finest. Jessica Walsh tried to argue they could assign someone else temporarily. The auditor explained that federal law didn't work that way. Jessica asked if there was some kind of exception process. The auditor handed her a business card for the DOE Inspector General's office and suggested she direct all future questions there. By noon, Jessica was cleaning out her office. By 2 p.m., her LinkedIn profile read former VP of Operations. By Friday, she was completely scrubbed from the Nexus website like she'd never existed. I heard most of this through Karen, who still had friends inside the company. According to her sources, the board meeting that followed the audit was epic. Lots of shouting, finger-pointing, and demands for explanations about how a $100 million contract could be derailed by a dress code dispute. The answer, of course, was that it wasn't really about dress codes. It was about someone with an MBA who thought authority came from making arbitrary rules instead of understanding the business. Jessica had fired me because she wanted to establish dominance. What she'd actually done was demonstrate that she had no idea how federal contracting worked. Meanwhile, I was settling into my new job with federal strategic partners. Same work, better pay, and clients who understood that experience trumped corporate politics every time. My first assignment was reviewing security protocols for a grid modernization project in North Carolina. The kind of work I'd been doing for years, but now getting paid what I was actually worth. The best part? No dress code. I could wear whatever tie I wanted as long as I kept the power grid secure and the paperwork compliant. The DOE Inspector General's report, when it finally came out 6 weeks later, was a masterpiece of bureaucratic understatement. Nexus Defense Solutions failed to follow established procedures for clearance designation transfer, resulting in contract non-compliance and potential security protocol violations. Translation: they screwed up so badly that DOE was considering barring them from future federal contracts. 3 months later, Austin called me from Virginia Tech. He'd been accepted into an advanced electrical engineering program with a focus on grid infrastructure. Full scholarship, paid internship, everything. "Dad," he said, "I've been reading about this stuff you do. Federal clearance, grid security, all that. It's actually pretty cool. It has its moments. Think there's room in the field for another Pearson?" I smiled. "Always room for people who understand that details matter, son." The financial pressure that had been weighing on me for years was finally lifting. The new salary meant I could pay off Sarah's medical bills within a year instead of 5. Austin's education was secure. I even started contributing to a retirement account again. More importantly, I was working with people who valued expertise. When I pointed out potential security vulnerabilities, they listened. When I recommended protocol changes, they implemented them. When I said something couldn't be done because of federal regulations, they said understood, instead of asking me to find creative workarounds. 6 months after the Nexus disaster, I was reviewing a DOE compliance report when I came across an interesting footnote. Nexus Defense Solutions had been barred from bidding on federal contracts pending completion of remedial compliance training and organizational restructuring. They'd lost their federal clearance authorization entirely. I didn't feel vindicated or sorry for them. Jessica Walsh had made her choice when she decided my tie was more important than my 15 years of experience. The federal government had made their choice when they decided clearance protocols mattered more than corporate convenience. And I'd made my choice when I took a better job with people who understood what they were paying for. These days, I work from home most of the time. No commute, no office politics, no young VPs telling me how to dress. Just me, my clearance, and clients who know the difference between authority and competence. Sometimes I drive past the old Nexus building on my way to client meetings. The parking lot is emptier than it used to be. Word is they're still rebuilding their federal contracts division, but it's tough when you've got a reputation for not understanding your own business. The whole experience taught me something important about corporate culture. Sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge at all. Sometimes it's just letting incompetence follow its natural course while you move on to something better. Austin graduates next year. He's already talking about applying for DOE internships, maybe following in the old man's footsteps. I told him the field needs good people who understand that protecting critical infrastructure isn't just a job, it's a responsibility. And sometimes the tie you're wearing is exactly right for the job you're about to get.